Mark, you asked me what I meant right there and we was cut off. I think it was you that asked me.
About what?
About the percentage of let me see, the percentage of people that in our area that actually see the game they're hunting.
I understood what you
And
I don't know
it's
that
very,
was me.
I lost you.
I think I interrupted. You were referring to 85% of the hunters never saw what they were hunting, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the meeting is now live on YouTube. I just sent the link to Missy.
Okay, thank you. Pat Lucetti, if you're on, can you make me host, please?
Sure, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, so we were going to take this 10 minutes to talk about the process so far and what you folks have been doing. So Sarah and I were thinking if we could put up on the screen just one of the group's work to date and not say it represents everybody, but then have folks talk about the discussions that went on behind it. That might be a good start. What do you think? Okay, Sarah, do you have what was group 4's?
I do. Let me pull that up.
Okay, so
Great. You guys see that okay?
for folks from the public, this is an example of work that the group has been doing. It is a draft. There are other drafts that have been developed by other subgroups. And so it's very much a work in progress. But would folks of the group like to talk a little bit about what the group has been working on?
Dreska, do you want to describe this, our document, or is she on, or?
I'm on, but I'll let you do it, Dan.
Okay, so this is Dan Vermillion from Livingston. Yeah, so this is just a draft issue statement that we worked on over the last 2 days, and its goal is trying to address acknowledge the complexity of elk management in Montana, emphasize the need for flexibility on a local level to involve and include recognition and addressing disease issues in places like Paradise Valley or in the DSA, and just the importance of working with all that the elk plan really involve as many stakeholders as possible, be as flexible as possible to maximize its opportunity for succeeding in managing elk in a way that is less contentious.
Other folks want to weigh in, particularly that were in groups that were modifying this or adding things to it?
I'm not sure which one this really is. That's kind of the same one we were working on, so. I'm not being possessive. I just want to make sure we have a good representation at the end.
So this was what was the group 4 just prior to our last breakout session. And so the members of group 4 were dispersed to the other groups.
Right. Okay, now I understand.
What were some of the things that other groups were adding to it or working on?
Our group sort of made some of this stuff a little bit less specific, and then in order to make it more specific, we took a lot of the numerical lists from group number 1 the first day and sort of worked on those bullet points just to sort of give this maybe a little more easy to read.
Allie, do you have the ability to share your screen? Oh, you were the one that was working on, had that document, is that right, for your group? So let's see, Sarah stop sharing and Allie share.
Holly is muted again.
Okay, I got it. I think this is the most recent one. So this is mostly from group number 1 the other day, and then we changed some stuff. Specifically number 3, we talked about quite a bit, which is we did that because we did take out, you can see at the bottom here, a lot of the stuff that they had in there from that original group. So that's kind of switched that into this number 3. And then number 5 here, I think these two things are kind of saying the same thing. We just weren't really sure which one we kind of liked better, that made more sense.
Other folks have any thoughts on these?
I was just going to say, I like number 7 right there. In the other group that we were part of, we came up with that same thought independently. We really think it's important that as FWP implements whatever decisions they do, that they come back with justification and maintain some public accountability there with that decision-making process.
Well, and I know that one of the things that everybody's with number 7 in particular, that definitely lends itself to transparency and decision making. The more people understand how decisions are made, the more the more transparent they become. So.
Okay, I think we're at the time for public comment. Lindsay, is that correct?
Yep, that is correct. So give me just 1 second here. It looks like we have 1 person in attendance. Cami, will you help me unmute this person?
Okay. All right, so the number ending in 945, I've unmuted on my side. So if you just hit *6, you should be able to start talking. Maybe. There you go.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Great. Listen, my name is Mark Cook. I'm from Stevensville, and I'm out of transparency and fairness. I'm with a nonprofit called Wolves of the Rockies. And this is for each individual that I've been watching for the last couple of days. I want to thank you all for your commitment to this process. It's really very important. I see landowners, livestock producers, and representatives from the hunting community are well represented as they should be. But I don't see any representation from the non-consumptive community, and this disappoints me greatly. And I think this is done by design by the senior leadership within Wildlife Division and FWP. And frankly, I'm seeing a pattern, and I think it's unjust and unfair. And I think it goes to show that the department is constantly disregarding other stakeholders. So my comment I'd like to leave with you all is I would request that you each give serious thought to wolves and other large carnivores as this moves forward, because they depend on elk for a lot of their protein. And the department will tell you that other stakeholders are going to be heard later down the road. But in fact, I rarely find this true, that they act on non-consumptive community recommendations. If you would be kind enough to consider put something in writing. The department will have to act in the best interest, or at least the interest of fairness for wolves and other large carnivores. I would be very grateful. And as I said earlier, I thank each of you for your commitment to this process and caring enough to be involved in it. And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you for that comment, Mark. I don't see any other call-in attendees right now, but I would like to stay in this format for the next half hour in case anybody else does call in. So Mike, you can just go ahead and proceed with the meeting however you want until lunchtime.
That means I have to stop eating, but that's okay. So what I'd like to do now is we've had a look at 2 of the draft issue statements. Who has one that they can share their screen on and from the other 2 groups?
Our group can go, I think. I'm the only one on, so I'll just speak for us. Oh, wait, no, Ren's on. Ren, do you want to go next?
I was in your group, but I missed most of the first one, so I'll let you.
Okay, we'll dive in here. You want me to share my screen there, Mike?
Yes, please.
Okay. Close my solitaire. All right. So we spent, well, first of all, I should say we really liked the developments that group 1 and 2 made from the first day. And so we took those 2 and we started meshing them together. And then we really started drilling down on the conflicts and the challenges to get really clear on what those were. So you all can see here, let me do this real quick. There we go. Okay, so you can see here, we built out and also added in some conflicts and challenges to help us get really clear on what those are. I guess, Mike, how do you want me to proceed with this? Do you want me to read through those or just let people read and ask questions?
So here's an idea. You see this in a lot of the groups, but so we talked, I think, in each of the groups about how, there's the solution and then there's the problem that is underlying it. So what I'd like to have is a discussion about, for 1 through 8 or 10 or however far we get. Okay, some of those talk about issues and maybe some solutions, but let's ask ourselves, okay, why should the elk management plan address these things? Okay, so management approaches to maintain elk populations near objective and the distribution of elk on the landscape, particularly or on private lands. Okay, that's kind of a recommendation. So what problem does that recommendation address?
No, sorry, Mike. That is the challenge or the conflict, is that there's a disagreement about those approaches. There's conflict over that.
Okay, so what are the conflicts?
Everybody has a different opinion about what's effective and what will work and where it should be implemented. And it's going to work in some areas and it's not going to work in other areas. Okay.
All right. So that's the problem that underlies the need for managing approaches to maintain elk populations near objectives. Do I have that right? Okay. When you say you want to balance landowner interests and publicly held wildlife resources, that is something you want to do to address what?
Again, each one of these is a challenge or a conflict. So here, the challenge is balancing the interests of the landowner and the fact that we have a publicly held wildlife resource.
Okay. But there's a conflict perceived in there, right? Where right now there isn't a balance. Is that correct?
Yeah, if other people in the group see that differently, chime in. But yes, that's the challenge right now, is that it's out of balance in some perspectives.
Okay. So my goal here is not to pick on these. These are outstanding. All right. My goal here is to get explicitly to the issue that is the root of the problem. Okay. All of these are great ideas for managing elk. And, you know, in some ways you can take these and kind of put them in your hip pocket for when it comes time to develop guiding principles. But some of these are, you know, they lay out what is the issue, what is the problem pretty well, but some of them are getting at, well, here's the solution. Okay. And so what we really want to try to do here is get at, well, what is the problem behind that solution? Does that make sense?
It does. Yep.
So let's go to 5, just as an example, balancing hunter opportunity with hunter experience or quality. What problem is that addressing?
That is the problem.
The problem is there's a perceived imbalance.
Yep. Yeah, for a lot of hunters, there's quote unquote opportunity, but it's not really opportunity. It's, you might as well go for a walk in a park is what the hunter would say. So the perception is that there's an imbalance in how opportunity provides a quality experience.
Okay, so it is that perception that is the problem. And finding, all right, the balance is the solution. You see what I'm saying? So in the issue statement, if we're defining the problem, we're defining the issue, we'll want to get to the root of these things. If we go down to number 10, budget and funding. Okay, what problem or issue is that addressing?
Marcus, I'll get you out of the hot seat. So sorry to leave you out there. Marcus was our scribe. He's trying to translate everything the group said. Budget and funding was something that we put on the list as just sort of a parking space. We didn't designate enough time to dive into what the issues were for that. So it's on there as a parking space. So maybe the group can help us define.
Oh yeah, and again, I'm not criticizing, and as much as Marcus looks like a fun person to pick on, I'm not picking on you, Marcus. So
don't feel picked on.
What's that?
I don't feel picked on.
Okay, so I'm just asking questions. So even if budget and funding was, you know, put in a parking place, if you were to state how budget and funding are part of the issue that needs to be solved, what would you say? The budget's too big and they have too much funding?
I guess I'll take a stab at this. So I think if you were to do an analysis of what the department would like to be doing, and if they had all the money in the world, what they would do to address the management needs that are expressed by both the hunter and the private landowner, that budget would be significantly more than what their current budget is. And so the problem is we have this funding gap for what is being asked of the department and what they're actually able to do with their current budget. So addressing that gap would be the challenge or the problem.
Okay, I think that is a really critical point you guys are making there, because, you know, in coming up with potential solutions to the problem, you know, people could ask for the moon, right? But there's no way that a budget or, you know, a current budget or a future budget or whatever would be able to support that. So it provides a constraint on what can be done. And so looking forward to, when it comes to a guiding principle, it'll be important to acknowledge that, staying within budget is going to be an important thing, or increasing the budget, or whatever it is you decide. Okay, but realizing that the budget is going to, or the money available is going to constrain other things that you might suggest they do. And that's not to say it's your problem to solve at this point, but it's an important factor that's going to go into decision making. Does that make sense?
I would add a comment there. I would say that, and this is a nitpicky here, but that may be more of a challenge that would be outside the power of the department to do anything about. So it's kind of one of those overarching deals. They don't get to control their budget.
Okay.
Or the cost of tags or any of the things that go into it. So.
Okay. Other thoughts? Okay, do we have one more group that we can put up?
Yes, I can share our group.
Okay.
I got it up here. All right, is that on everyone's screen?
Yep.
Okay, we stuck with or kind of tried to expand on group one's issue statement. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on the first few paragraphs or lines, and then we added group two's commonalities points before we dove into the conflicts. And this is where we spend a lot of time on the conflicts right here. And we tried to narrow this down to the actual issues and tried to avoid talking about balancing interests, or, we really tried to hammer home what are the issues. So there are conflicts among stakeholders regarding the management prescriptions to sustainably manage elk on Montana's landscape. And then we did not address, we didn't really get into that at all. So Mike, if you'd like me to read these, or if people would like to look at those, I can answer questions, or Mark or Patrick can also answer questions on it.
Well, let's go ahead and have folks take a look at them. And I think that these are pretty good examples of stating what the problem is, and, realizing when, it comes to finding a balance, that's further down the decision-making process. Okay. And so stating here the things that might need to be balanced, all right, is the important thing. So again, balance might go down the road to guiding principles, but these are capturing the problems that might need to be balanced. So take a look at those.
I think that looks really good. One thing that our group talked about a little bit is like your number 4 there. Disease risk between livestock, or between wildlife and domestic livestock. We also added, disease within wildlife specifically, and disease between wildlife and humans.
Yeah, I think that's a good, I think that's a good addition to that, because we're not just talking about livestock diseases, we're talking about diseases between themselves. And
our group talked about that as well, and thought that maybe a human component to that might be important, at least to discuss where that fits. Whether it's with producers, whether it's, with something like CWD and the impacts to hunters, but at least thinking about the human component of that and how that plays into it.
Other thoughts?
Where did you go?
This is Dan. I just think if you want to look at number 7, we wanted to make sure that what we were taught, what this group was talking about is that it did not, this wasn't about landowner preferences. It's actually about transferability and private sale and would not affect landowner preference.
Yeah.
Although we did have some discussion as to whether it should.
Okay, I'm not following you, Dan. It's probably obvious to everybody else, but
Anyway.
If you were to restate number 7 there, so that.
Oh, no, I wasn't. We just restated it to make sure that it was really specific, that it didn't include landowner preference.
Okay, so what did that restatement look like? And just off the top of your head is fine.
Oh, I think it's exactly what Justin wrote.
Yeah, we started off, Mike, as it was the transferability of tags, and there was some confusion on whether that was during the application process or what that was. And we're directly talking about the private sale of the tags that the landowners receive.
Gotcha. Okay, I understand now. Thanks. Anybody have other thoughts? What's missing here? What shouldn't be there?
I like the inclusion of season length there in number 6. That's one thing I've advocated for quite a while, that quite possibly we need some adjustment to that general season length that would in some way reduce the number of hunters afield at any given time, which in itself would contribute to a better or a higher quality hunting experience. So I just think we should talk about it at some point. So I'm glad it's in there.
Okay. I realized yesterday that I must have said the phrase other thoughts like 94,000 times. So I'm trying to think of an alternative. So let's just say I'm soliciting further input.
Would you like me to continue sharing my screen, Mike, or do you want me to?
Well, yeah, for now. So, all right, no, you can go ahead and turn off, Justin. Thanks. So here's where I'd like to go after lunch, and I'll put it out there to you. I think working in the small groups today was incredibly productive, and I want to commend all of you for weighing in and participating, sticking in there, and listening to each other well and respectfully, even though I know there are disagreements. So hats off. We have a couple of choices. Well, starting off, I'd like to do the same thing that we did last night. Pick one and edit. All right. It's up to you to do whichever you want, pick one that you like of the examples that you've seen. I would suggest consideration be given to that one we just saw, because I thought it did a good job of stating the problems behind what will eventually be the solutions. Now, I'm not saying it's complete and has everything, but it might be a place and a format to start editing. Okay, including things that maybe your group thought was important before or what have you. So let's start with that. Is there a particular, and you don't have to agree with me, I'm pretty used to that. So is there a particular draft issue statement that you want to work with?
Hey, Mike, what is the output we're trying to get after we all work on one document? Is it just trying to figure out which one would be the best suited for creating a product that we can all work on?
Yeah, basically the output is what you want it to be. Okay, you're going to provide an issue statement that says, here's the problem, or here are the problems we're trying to solve in our recommendations. And so it can look like whatever you want it to.
I have a thought, Mike.
Yeah.
Can we combine them? I kind of like the beginning paragraphs of that one that came out of group 4 along with the numerical ones that we just looked at.
I think that would be great. So let's, Sarah, do you have copies of all of these?
Not yet. So I was going to suggest during lunch, if we're going to break in a few minutes here, if everyone who has those documents that you just shared on your screens could send those to me. And email is fine, since I think several of those were Google Docs. That works.
So those of you that were recording, go ahead and email copies to Sarah. What email address, Sarah?
Let me put it in the chat. It'll be easier to make sure it comes in correctly that
Sarah,
way.
do you have the one from group 4?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so over lunch, be thinking about which one you want to be the base that we work off of and things that you want to cut and paste from others. Does that make sense? Okay, now our two choices. And it's up to you. We can either go back into small groups and work on these individually and then come back together, or we can try to edit a document as a group. And so obviously it's easier to do in a small group, but on the other hand, if you feel like that we're at a point where small groups really aren't going to accomplish more and we need to work on the final document all together, I understand.
Mike, what if we did 2 groups instead of 4? And so we kind of start, so it's a little bigger, but not as big as the entire group.
Makes sense to me. What do others think? See a thumbs up, thumbs up.
I would say that, or else the entire group as a whole.
I saw a thumbs up and a peace sign, and
to me, in my opinion, I think it makes sense to just come together as one group at this point, but that's just me talking.
That makes sense to me as well. I'm open to whatever the group wants to do. I think we've all been circling around a lot of the similar issues, and maybe we just need to hear each other as a group again.
I also think the larger group would be beneficial at this point.
Okay, well, how about if we try the larger group, and if we end up running around the fire hydrant, we can split out into 2 and make that work. What do you think about that?
That sounds good.
Okay, so in the larger group, though, one thing that I want everybody to be very cognizant of, it's in a large group, it's much easier for the vocal people to drown out the folks less likely to talk. All right, and so that's just human nature. There's no judgment implied there. So if everybody could be sensitive to who are we not hearing from, who's not weighing in, okay, and be open to making sure everyone is heard equally, I think that would be really beneficial. Does that make sense? That's another thing I've said 98,000 times. Is that cognitively acceptable? How about that?
Yes.
Okay. Lindsay.
Yeah, I have one participant or an attendee who can't get into my comment, but wanted me to ask this to the group. So it just says, considering that elk, oh, this is Daniel Kinka, by the way. He says, considering that elk are managed below carrying capacity in parts of Montana, while social carrying capacity is concurrently increasing, will the group consider increasing elk quotas anywhere? So I thought I would pose that question to the group since he couldn't get in. Another question for you, Mike. Thank you, Daniel, for that comment also. I don't know why you can't get in using the instructions on the agenda. I hope others aren't having issues as well. So a question for you, Mike. We are breaking out, or we have the potential to break out again this afternoon, correct? Yes. Okay, so participants, we are going to have to switch back to the meeting link we used this morning. So I don't necessarily care when you do that over the lunch break, but when you do log back in, make sure to use the original link that we used this morning. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Is that cognitively acceptable? We're changing our terminology here.
I'm sorry it's confusing. We just can't do breakout rooms in this format.
Okay, so is it time to do that now, Lindsay?
Lunch is scheduled for 12 until 12:30. You could tweak that if you wanted to, but otherwise that's what it's scheduled for.
Okay, so for what we're asking the group to do, grab some chow and also give some thought. Is a half hour enough, or do you want 45 minutes?
Half hour.
Half hour?
Yep.
And if you guys will send over those documents right now, I can send that to I'll maybe post it to the new Zoom meeting that we're in, so everyone can look at that over lunch too.
Okay, so let's get back together on the other Zoom meeting and see you at 12:30.
Hey, Lindsay, I'm going to pull back the host.
Okay, that's fine, Pat. I don't know if you want to switch this over right now. I don't care either way. I was just going to put up a message. Misty's not planning on restreaming until 12:30, but it doesn't matter to me if you want to switch meetings now or not.
Well, I can't stream to both meetings.